Ma'at Hotep, Namaskar, Ubuntu, Harambe, Amani Nao Pendo. Amani Nao Pendo simply means peace and love. We welcome you and thank you once again for joining another episode of Purge, Purify, and Renew Your Mind. The primary purpose of Purge, Purify, and Renew Your Mind pardon me, is to enlighten minds, empower people, enrich, elevate, and transform as many lives as possible for the better. Our topic for today, and we're going to try to endeavor to have some substance to go to this one word, now. So food for thought, think about, meditate, and contemplate, and reflect on the word now. And at this time, brothers and sisters, I have a special guest that's on this episode. I'm looking at her right now with her dreadlocks, or I don't know what she called them, some kind of locks. But our special guest, my third daughter, the only third daughter, Sister Sharon Denise Williams, and we call her Sharon. But and that word Sharon is a very unique name. It's a Hebrew name, but it's also over the last few years it came to my awareness that Sharon is synonymous with the ancient Kemetic term Ma'at. And we know Ma'at means, if we do a little homework, we know the word Ma'at is a concept. And it's 7 words that's connected, or virtues that connected with the term Ma'at, which is truth, justice, righteousness, order, harmony, balance, and reciprocity. So in Hebrew, the name Sharon means that which is straight, that which is upright, or that which is in order, or harmony, or just. So the name Sharon is actually synonymous with the ancient Kemite or Kemetan, so-called Egyptian name Ma'at. So with that being said, we want to give thanks to the one and only. I'm looking at him in the audience somewhere over there, and he's trying to sort of hide. But the one and only and second to none, the director of MC Productions, who make these episodes possible with his great camera work and his intro and other creativity. Brother Willie, quote unquote, mic check, Cobra. So I'm looking at him, that's why I'm turning my head, but he's not in front of the camera, but his spirit and his presence is in this room. And moving right along, at this time we want to chop it up, slice and dice it and mix it up, as I call it, and the topic is now. But before we actually begin or get it more into the topic, I want to give a thunderbolt shout out to a few people that I know, some family members and some personal friends who may have already had a birthday or soul incarnation day in the month of December, and those who may have a birthday and those who do have a birthday in the month of January. And this is not all of them, but it's just a few to make this video. And first of all, I want to give a thunderbolt shout out to a spiritual twin brother of mine who live here in the Mississippi Delta, right? And his name is a title, Cherokee, Choctaw, Kemetic King High Priest. So, you know, I sometimes shorten it and I say CC KKP, Cherokee, Choctaw, Kemetic King High Priest, HP, High Priest. But his soul incarnation day was December the 9th. And if I'm not mistaken, that time of the year, it's a time frame, I think, from November to December, but it's related to what's now being called the 13th sign of the zodiac. And even if we went in order based on those signs, even though it's called or made reference to at the 13th sign, the Serpentarius would the serpent holder would be the ninth sign, but it's referred to as the 13th sign of the zodiac. So I give a thunderbolt shout out to my spiritual twin brother, Dr. Khalif, who's doing great work in the city of Greenville and throughout the Mississippi Delta. December the 21st was the time of the year was called the winter solstice, right? And that's really the shortest day in the year. And that's when the sun in his yearly journey has reached its lowest point in the northern hemisphere. So if you could have an image in your mind and see draw a circle, imagine a circle, and on the east you have the sign of Aries, right? That's March 21st. Then at the top, which is Cancer, you have June the 21st. That's the so-called beginning of summer. And then Libra, which is September the 21st, that's on the so-called west side, east side, however you may look at it. And then December the 21st, that's when the sun has made its journey and reached its lowest point in the northern hemisphere. And that's considered to be the first day of winter. And my wife and I had a granddaughter who was born 1 year ago on December the 21st. So that's very significant. It has many spirit. Her name is Imani B-E-A, Imani. And Imani is the seventh day. Today is the seventh day of the so-called holiday or cultural celebration of family, community, and friends. That's called Kwanzaa, and Imani is the seventh day or the last day of that celebration. So I give a shout out, or we give a short shout out. My daughter here, which is her Imani's aunt, and she turned 1 year old on the December the 21st, about almost a month ago. December the 26th, just an acknowledgement, was the beginning of the holiday or social cultural day that we call Kwanzaa. And it's celebrated for 7 days. You got 7 principles, you got 7 symbols, and you got it's centered around 7 candles that for those principles that's called the Nguzo Saba. And you have the black candle in the middle, 3 on the left, 3 red on the left, and 3 green on the right. And on the first day, which is on December the 26th, which is called Umoja. And bear in mind that the language of Kwanzaa is Kiswahili. That's an East African language that's celebrated, that's spoken primarily over much of the continent called Africa, right? And it's a widely spread language, and it was adopted because it seemed to be compared to other languages, other mother tongues on the continent, to be so-called non-tribal and spoken widely and was used in trade and so forth and so on. So the black candle, which they sit on what's called the candle holder, which is called a kinara in Swahili. And so the black candle is placed in the middle. And you get, as I stated a minute ago, a second ago, you got 3 on the left and 3 red on the left and 3 green on the right. So the black candle is lit first on the first day, and which is Umoja, and the conversation is take place based on that principle of unity. Okay, then you alternate. Then on the second day, which is Kuja Shakalia, you light the black candle again, and then you light the red candle. A conversation again transpire. Then on the third day, which is Ujima, which is called collective work and responsibility, you light the first green candle next to the black candle, and you go on and on back and forth, alternating until you get to the seventh candle, which is today Imani, which is faith. So with that being said, Sister Sharon, that which is straight, upright, and just, and so forth and so on, she will read a few words concerning this 7th day, which is called Imani. Sharon.
Imani, or faith. Imani is the 7th principle of Kwanzaa. It is essentially profound and enduring belief and in commitment to all that is of value to us and as a family, community, people, and culture. Faith is put forth as the principle, the last principle, as unity is put forth as the first principle for a definite reason. It is to indicate that without unity, we cannot begin our most important work. But within faith, we cannot sustain it. But without faith, we cannot sustain it. Unity brings us together and harnesses our strength. But faith in each other and the good, the right, the beautiful inspires and sustains the coming together and the commitment to take the work to its end. Imani.
That's it? Mm-hmm. Okay, brothers and sisters, that was a few words concerning Imani, and we hope that it was briefly informative, and you will be inspired to do further investigation on your own. We just touching bases, as I said. We slicing it up, dicing it up, chopping it up, and mixing it up. But our theme is the word or topic now. And we may do a little grown folks talk. We can look at some of those songs that we sing and dance on and dance to and sing about. But knowledge, accurate knowledge and truth is grown folks talk. I didn't say nothing about your age. But grown folks is to become more mature in our knowledge, in our understanding, and then the application of that knowledge and that understanding, and really the knowledge of and the constructive application of that knowledge. That's wisdom. That's wisdom. And most of us and many of us, if not all of us, in the country and around the world, we hear the phrase everywhere: knowledge is power. And to me, this is my opinion, that's partially true. But now knowing is not enough. Knowing is not enough. It's the constructive application of knowledge that generates what we call personal power. And most of us and many of us, if not all, we possess some knowledge about this, that, and another. And it may be accurate. But what produces personal power, or what we may call ashe in the Yoruba language, right? Personal power, ashe, is we must apply it. It must be constructive application of this accurate knowledge that generates what we call ashe or personal power. Moving right along, a few more Thunderbolt shout outs. January the 3rd, that's the birthday or soul incarnation day of one of my paternal aunt who lived in New York City, Harlem, New York, and she passed away maybe about 3 or 4 years ago. And her nickname was Fat, but her actual given name was Lucille. and she passed away a few years ago, and she was the one that me and my wife that stayed with for a minute while we was our sojourn in Harlem, New York. And she was very dear to many of us and most of us, some of my other extended family members. But giving a shout out to her soul incarnation day, which would be January the 3rd. Then January 17th, that's a paternal uncle of mine, and we call him Bubba, but his actual given name was Leon. He passed away also a few years ago. I don't have the exact recall at this time of the year, but it was a few years ago. And for years he was living in a wheelchair, based on some early behavior and some certain situation that occurred that left him paralyzed from the waist down. And his name was Leon, so we give a thunderbolt shout out to him. And then on January that's coming up, we'll be coming up January 2022, well, what's called January 2022. My wife, Cynthia Williams, her soul incarnation day is January 25th. And last but not least, future not sister-in-law. Yeah, it would be.
Mine.
Huh? It would be your sister, well, daughter-in-law, your sister-in-law. But her soul incarnation day is January the 30th. And so we give, at this time, we give a shout out to all of them and the events that I talked about. So we'll say Ashe 3 times. Ashe.
Ashe.
Ashe. Ashe. Yeah. So moving right along. With that being said, and we know today is considered to be January the 1st, and was acknowledged in this country and many other places around the world as New Year's Day. But I want to say, I'll share a few thoughts that hopefully it don't burst your bubble, but may inspire you to do a little homework beneath and beyond the surface of all superficialities and investigate this thing about January the 1st being what we call the new year. But just a little tidbit on that, which is in opposition to January the 1st as being the new year. Think about this. And you already, most of us, many of us, are already aware of this. March 21st, right, of any year is considered to be the first day of spring, right, by nature in the universe, the cosmos. So look at what transpired on what we call springtime. That's when everything in nature and throughout the universe seems to come alive. It's like a renewal, a regeneration, a rejuvenation, a rebirth, right? The plants begin to bloom and blossom. The leaves come back, start coming on the trees. And even ourselves as so-called human beings, we seem to come alive, be more juiced up, coming from what we call winter, right? Now connect the dots. Winter is considered to be December the 21st, right? The first so-called day of winter. And for the next 3 months, that's considered to be winter time. And most everything in nature, including ourselves, go into a state of hibernation. We get sluggish. We appear to want to rest more and eat less, right? Just to relax. So in terms of being winter, things appear to be so-called dead, right? Snow covered the earth in many places. You get the chill, cold weather. You get rain, you get heavy wind, rainstorms, so forth and so on. And that's December the 21st. That's when the sun, not the SON, and I'm talking natural and spiritual facts. That's when the sun, the SUN, in its yearly journey around what's called the sphere of the zodiac, reaches its lowest point in the northern hemisphere. The sun reaches its lowest point, and according to astrology and astronomy also, the sun appears to stop at that low point. Is on the so-called cross for 3 days. Then on December the 25th, a few minutes after midnight, the sun begins its upward motion or journey again. And when it crosses what's called the vernal equinox, which is the spring solstice, around March the 21st, right? That's springtime, and the sun is considered to be reborn. This happened every so-called year. So March the 21st, by nature and spiritually and in terms of the universe, that's springtime. That's the true, actual new year. Not by the Gregorian or Julian calendar that we follow now, that was set up and changed by the Roman Empire for political reason, for social reason, for economic reason. So do your homework. Don't blame me. Don't blame me. Just do the homework. But you got to do the homework beneath and beyond the surface of all superficialities. You got to have the inner courage and strength to do your homework, to do your own investigation, and not be afraid. Because if you're afraid, regardless of how you became fearful, that's on you. But the truth remains what it is. And we know that it says in biblical writings that God is no respecter of persons. So our ignorance to truth, our belief in that which is not the truth, don't alter one bit the facts to evidence the truth. So we can be in denial if we want to, but truth remains the same. We can be fearful to investigate, but truth, facts, accurate knowledge remains the same. And as we was talking before the airing of this episode, and we made a point in our discussion how every thought, a spell is a manifestation of a thought, an idea. And each of us are spell casting every day, whether we conscious of it or not, whether we like it or not. We cast spells because what? A spell can be low vibrational or high vibrational. And a spell is a manifestation of a thought. So if our thoughts are low vibrational or untruthful or false, then that's low vibrational. And we begin to change and improve and raise up our thoughts in terms of what I may be called angelic thoughts, positive and progressive thoughts, right? Then we raise in the frequency of our thoughts. And then the raising of that frequency of the thought and the expression in life, our lives will improve, regardless of who or what. So it's a inside job. It's inside work. It's inside development that we should be concerned about. And if you want to look at it like this, this your new year. This is the new you, which is every day, regardless of what we call time of the year. And I had intended to get into time as a construction. It's not no such thing in actual truth time, but time is what we call time is an invention by humanity, by human beings, many moons ago, that serves a purpose because it help give human life aim, purpose, and direction. Help give order to our social living. But enough on that. Sharon, Sharon, you have anything you may want to share with the audience at this time? Say what you want. Say what you will. Ask what you will. I don't know if I can answer, but ask it anyway.
I'm sure you could.
Mm-hmm.
In what ways can people...
That's a question you asking.
Yeah.
Come on.
In what ways can people take advantage of the power of now?
That's it?
The concept of the power of now.
Well, as I see it right now, and that's a powerful concept, right? A powerful idea. And that nowness has power to it. And when I reflect on it, at this moment, the so-called past, right, is gone. What we call the future hasn't come, right? And all that we have is what's called the present. And really, in truth, it's what's called the eternal now. That's a framework that I see. Mm-hmm. Everything is now. And even our so-called experiences, right, in the past. In truth, there's no such thing as past, present, and future. That's established in terms of thinking, critical thinking and understanding, so that we can comprehend. Mm-hmm. But everything, all things, is really the now. We live it in the now. And with that concept, what you asked the question based on, what must be done, what we can do, what our powers are, our capabilities are, right? It's always now. It will never be in the so-called past. It can't be in the so-called future. Each so-called day that comes, we are always in the now. And there's power in the now. And Dr. King, I'm thinking of a quote of Dr. King, and we can fit it into this equation if we desire. But it's a direct quote. He said, the time, many of us done heard it, the time is always ripe, R-I-P-E, to do right, R-I-G-H-T. The time. Ain't no so-called, as we have been socially programmed and engineered to perceive it, I'm gonna wait till a better time. Well, the time is always now that we can start. Whatever it is that we desire, whatever it is that one may seek, right, to achieve, we always can start now. And starting now, you don't necessarily have to have money in the bank, money in your pocket. All we need is the thought and the idea. And we always can start doing something on what we desire to achieve or bring about. Because any idea, once again, every idea, right, that we can visualize or desire to achieve, it starts in our mentality. Because as if the phrase goes that first there must be a conception, right? Must be able to conceive something in the conscious mind. What do I want? I don't care what it is. What do you want? What do I want? You got to have the conception of it. Got to conceive it in the mind, right? And then along with that, if the desire for whatever it is that one seeks to achieve is a burning desire, then that idea that we conceive in the conscious mind goes in what the Bible calls the heart. And the heart is just a symbol for the subconscious mind. And the subconscious mind doesn't think, analyze, or whatever. It takes the seed, whatever you give it. It could be based on facts or falsified. It's going to take that seed thought, right? And if you got a burning desire, that subconscious mind, like a garden, it's going to cultivate it along with your desire for it. It could be untrue, unfactual, but the subconscious mind going to take that seed just like a garden, and with your desire, it's going to cultivate it, right? And then, like, with effort, with a plan, or even just with effort, we bring forth that seed thought. And in short, it's like what's called conceive, believe, and achieve. Because you can't achieve what you first haven't conceived, right? That's a spiritual, mathematical, scientific impossibility to do that. That's not the way the mind was designed. The conception must come first. The imagination, in the workshop of the imagination, the visualization. And I think the Bible put in a verse that says something like, knock, seek, and ask. Knock. I mean, ask and you shall receive. That's like what I said, like, what do you want? That's the conception. That's the conscious mind aspect of the mind. Because the mind is one, right? Then the seeking. That's like the burning desire. That's like putting the seed thought into the subconscious mind or the garden, right? Mm-hmm. Then the last, it's like a formula to me. It says, knock. Knock is our work, our effort that we make to bring into fruition what we have conceived. Mm-hmm. We do it all the time, consciously and unconsciously, in terms of everyday life. We do it all the time. And sometimes I give an example like a man or woman may have some affection for another person they don't know. Mm-hmm. You know, at some point, that's the conceiving something, right? They think about it every day. Oh, I sure would like to talk to that man or that woman, right? Okay, that's the conception of that. And then it comes to them like, well, I'm gonna try to get her telephone number or get his telephone number, or see can I strike up a conversation with him or her, mm-hmm. right? And then every day they're trying to figure out how to put themselves in, around that person until eventually they get the phone number and get the permission to call that person or meet with that person or whatever. So that's like taking that idea and putting it in the garden, which is the subconscious mind. That's the desire, right? And then you, as I said briefly a moment ago, you start making effort to try to achieve that. Yeah. We do it every day on everything. Anything that you say you want. And if we want it bad enough, then that desire, almost other things become insignificant. But you're going to do that one thing every day. Something related to that one thought. So, I hope that answers your question on that about now. And now, as I said, now is the time, so-called time.
Yes, you do your thank you.
Go ahead.
What else you got for me?
Why are you here today?
Why am I here?
Why did you come here today with me? That's a tough question.
Nope, not tough. These are conversations we have any given day. Yeah, these are the conversations we have any given day. And I'm sure you just enjoy me being here.
That's the end of that. Ain't nobody else in this room but us, a partner, because she looking, I think the engineer, and I be looking around in the room to see if he in there too. And he may be, and he may not be. But so if you see our heads shift left or right, so it's a possibility, because the cameraman, he always bees around, and he may be in here somewhere. And we appreciate him being in here, doing his behind the scene work and expressing his magnificent and glorified creativity. So we give a Thunderbolt, always give a Thunderbolt shout out to him, for being on top of his, it's not a job, it's a labor of love. And as I said in the beginning, I'm say it again, how did I put it? The one and only, and second to none. Engineer and director of MC Production. He makes these episodes and this Purge, Purify, and Renew Your Mind possible. And we give a shout out, a Thunderbolt shout out for him with that magnificent introduction. That's his work. That's not mine. I'm just a beneficiary of it. But that's his work. He may have had one of those dreams that Dr. King talked about, and he brought it to fruition. And so I'm just a helping hand. I'm just someone going for the ride. But it's him and him alone, and we give thanks for that. And as I stated, we stated, mouth getting kind of dry, pardon me again. You don't mind, because I know we all do this and do more than this, but we slicing it up, dicing it up, chopping it up, and mixing it up. So we just making a little small circle on this, that, and the other, and hopefully that is relevant and informative and inspirational to you and to us. But before we close out, we want to say a little bit again, and really it's something that we need and must talk about in one shape, form, or another every day. Psychological warfare. Because the masses of humanity, in particularly, I'm not going to say black humanity, I'm saying aboriginal, equivalent African humanity, our minds are under attack. And I know, and we know, and some of you may say Africa is not the original name of the continent. We know that. But we're not going to argue and fight and let that be a stumbling block for us moving forward. And we do need to move forward. But we know now there's a continent for many years, many moons, that's referred to and called Africa. So we started with that understanding. And at a later date, in the future, near future, or long-term future, when we have achieved true liberation and salvation, maybe we'll come up and we'll change the name if we want to. We'll change the name to whatever we want to suit our needs and to suit our understanding. But the main point is that we are all attacked by what's called psychological warfare. For what? Our minds. For our minds. Because if a so-called enemy capture an individual or people's mind, they have your allegiance. How are we going to get out of that? And then a biblical verse in the so-called New Testament, and I'm paraphrasing, said, love God the divine force power in the universe and within ourselves with all what? All your mind, all your heart, all whatever. That's your allegiance. So if a external so-called human being or collectivity of so-called humans, I call them the wicked and wise, has captured our minds and maintained our minds through psychological warfare, then they have our allegiance. But our allegiance should go only to what? The divine force and power within ourselves and within the universe. That's a dilemma. And most of us are in denial of that. And we are most of humanity and most of so-called, as I said, Aboriginal, Alkebulan, African humanity are on a low vibrational spell. Because if our minds have been captured and we experiencing what's called mental bondage or mental enslavement, that means that our thoughts and ideas and concepts have been twisted also. So we thinking or having thoughts with concepts and ideas that have been injected into our minds. Think over that. That's a dilemma. That's mental enslavement. That's mental psychological imprisonment. And the double dose, as I stated, too many of us are in denial. Think over that. So we living in a time in a day or so-called year that the majority of us are calling the new year. So even if you're acknowledging that, or you may wait till springtime and spring forward in terms of your mentality, in terms of your thinking, in terms of your research, in terms of your growth and development, we must make a change. We must start, as the topic say, now. We must start now. And as I always say that we owe it to ourselves. We owe it to the ancestors that dwells within us, not just in the universe, but each of us is our ancestors. Think over that. Meditate on that. Go do some homework on that. We are our ancestors. And then not only do we owe it to ourselves and the ancestors within us that dwells within us, we owe it to the beautiful ones yet unborn. It's time, quote unquote time, to break that cycle. Because most of us and all of us, we're not infinite in the body temple. One day, we're going to check out. We're going to check out. Just like those who so-called came before us checked out. But they left us something to work with. If we search it out. They left us with supreme examples. Some of them left us information and knowledge in terms of their writing, in terms of their lifestyle. And so don't even get into putting those who came before us into different categories based on their particular philosophy and based on their choice of work and how they did what they did. All of them and most of them that were sincere in heart band together with others in a so-called group or organization with the one idea, right? And it was their choice. And they felt that their choice was the way to uplift right? Their brothers and sisters, their people, our people. So all of them didn't agree on the same way, the same tactic. But each of them, the individual and groups and organizations, it was what I call cosmic love for their people, to break the shackles of social, economic, and political enslavement and bondage. That all people have a human right, not a civil right. It's our divine right to enjoy and aspire and quest for a higher quality of so-called human life, in spite of whoever. Not to join on to those who are oppressing, degrading, controlling, and so forth and so on. No. We have a right. That's one of the principles of you want to say anything right now?
No.
You listen. You gonna read something in a few minutes? Is that what you're saying?
Go ahead. Yes, I will.
That's one of the second principle of Kwanzaa. Kuja Shakalia. To define ourselves, name ourselves, create for ourselves, and speak for ourselves instead of being what? Defined, named, and created for and spoken for by others. All people have that right. But we as a people, more so than other groups of ethnic groups of humanity, have been denied that right and many other rights, human rights. Not just civil rights, but human rights also. Sure.
Kujishakalia is the second principle of Kwanzaa. It's also called self-determination. The ability to define ourselves, name ourselves, create for ourselves, and speak for ourselves. This too expresses itself as both commitment and practice. It demands that we, as African people, define, defend, develop ourselves instead of allowing or encouraging others to do this. It requires that we recover lost memory and once again shape our world in our own image and interest. And it is a call to recover and speak our own special cultural truth to the world and make our own unique contribution to the forward flow of human history. The first act of a free people is to shape its world in its own image and interest. And it's a statement about their conception of self and their commitment to self-determination.
That's it?
Kujishakalia.
Kujishakalia. And what language is Kwanzaa used in its celebration?
What language is it? Kiswahili.
That's true. And another tidbit, thank you, Sharon, Rose of Sharon. I was reviewing early this morning, and I think it was 2 short videos by Judge Joe Brown. And Judge Joe Brown, he's a little up in age, and he was growing up or lived during the 60s and 50s and 60s that many of us know that our experience in this country. But the point I'm making is that the 2 videos he wasn't speaking good on. He said that he wasn't going to celebrate Kwanzaa or Juneteenth because he based on his research, based on his living during those times, the 60s and stuff like that, he said the reason the person that was interviewing him asked him why not, and she was trying to say some things about what Kwanzaa was in this way and that way, and Judge Joe Brown was her guest. But he said some of the things that he was displeased with and dissatisfied with was the founder of Kwanzaa, Dr. Maulana Karenga, who's still living now. But he felt that was speaking from his knowledge and his understanding and those he knew at that time and however he was involved during those times, that he condemned Dr. Karenga, regardless of how positive the Kwanzaa creation is and what it means, for being like an agent for the government, FBI, and some of the things he did, because he spent a year or so in jail for some charges, and he accused him of being what Dr. Karenga group was called the US organization, and how they were manipulated by the FBI and to those two brothers we know of the Panther Party, John Hudgens and someone else that were killed on the university, I think in Los Angeles. And then he was speaking from facts, and he put that out there. And then he made on the other video, he was speaking concerning June 10th and Kwanzaa. And I have read some information in Dr. Claude Anderson's books where he put in historical context about the June 10th. It ain't what we think it is and how it came about. Even though now it's been pushed up and raised up as a so-called holiday, June 10th holiday, but the historical facts and evidence concerning that is not what we think, because the so-called blacks or African Americans in Galveston, Texas, they had already been told, according to some of the evidence, soon after, about the Emancipation Proclamation, but from some of their own. But they didn't take that until whatever this general came in a year or two later, and okay, we so-called free now. So it long story short, and it's all that is around, like what I continue to say about how we are as a people. Too many of us take things and dwell on the surface, right? And it seems like it's a program in there, a social conditioning, that we don't do personal and collective research to satisfy that belief, right? Or what you've been told is the truth. In order to do that, as we was talking earlier before we started, you got to go have the courage to go beneath and beyond the surface of all superficialities. That's on everything. And I always used to say to my maternal grandmother and just people in general, you can't be afraid of your own mind. You can't be afraid. And when you get to a certain age, what we call responsibility, as a so-called teenager, adult, or young adult, you owe it to yourself, right? To investigate everything that you've been told, everything that you believe, even if you don't complete the research and investigation in your lifetime. Because now you have came to the point of young adulthood, or the age of responsibility. Now you should, each individual should have the mindset to examine everything, socially, economically, politically, and especially religiously. Question your belief. How else could you want to grow? So how did I come to have this belief as opposed to another belief? Did I sit down and some do some homework? Did I sit down in some quiet meditation and reflection, and then came to a conclusion, and then continue my research and meditation and contemplation? We don't do that. But you owe it to yourself. We owe it to the divinity within ourselves. To what? Know the truth. That's what in New Testament I think St. John, the 8th chapter, 32nd verse says, don't. And we say it all the time. Know the truth, and the truth shall set you free, make you free. That's what the verse said. We say I want to know the truth. I think most times that many of us want to know what goes with what we already believe. Mm-hmm. So I question whether we truth seekers or not.
The truth that satisfies.
Your present conditioning, your engineering, and what Dr. Bobby writed in one of his little pamphlets, great psychologist of ours that lived in New York City, not New York City, but Chicago, passed away in 1982. But he coined the phrase mental-side, coined the word mental-side. And if I'm saying it correctly, as he wrote it, it's the deliberate and systematic destruction of a person or a people's mind, right, for ultimate destruction or extermination, as he said. That's mental side. We on the mental side, right? Dr. Wilson called it social amnesia. Dr. W.E. Du Bois called it a double consciousness, but they were making reference to the same mental condition of our mind. You hear the Stockholm syndrome. We use terms like brainwashing or cognitive dissonance. The mental, the mind. The program is so deep that we go get the shaking when a nugget of truth is placed on the table or brought up. We get the shaking, because we it's like an addiction. Seriously, like an addiction. It can't comprehend because that program is so deep and it's generational, right? It's generational, and day in and day out, it's still it's pushed and maintained and contained. Enforced. That's the word. It's enforced, whether we conscious of it or not. And most of people, the masses of people, regardless of race, color, or creed, and especially so-called black humanity, are in denial. Don't even know what's going on. You're getting it from the radio. You're getting it from the TV. You're getting it from your so-called education, which is nothing but training. It's not education. It's training. Our minds are bombarded everywhere, attacking the mind, reinforcing the earlier programming and social amnesia.
Generation after generation.
It's generation after generation. And then, we ask the question, I don't know why we as a people can't get together and do this here and do that. But Dr. Malefic Santa, they wrote the book some years ago called Afrocentricity. And I don't know, it's a popular book, and I don't know why he haven't came to the understanding to change the title of the book. It won't take away from the content because there's no such thing as Afrocentricity. But what he referring to was called African centeredness. Mm-hmm. Put our minds at the center of ourselves, or we at the center of our culture and our history and whatever. The book popular, but he still got a new edition called Afrocentricity. There's no such thing as Afro.
That's why he should change it?
Change not the contents, the name. Afro is gone. That's Afro. Even though many understand Afro and centricity refer to center, but there's no. How can it be there's no center of Afro because Afro is nothing. We'll associate Afro, with the hairstyle and all that. But what he's referring to, and even in his writing, he's talking about placing ourselves in the center, or we the point as African people. There is a continent called Africa, and a lot of progressive scholars even today. Some years ago, they started like in the 80s and 90s, but they started using the word African. He said African centeredness. You hear African centered education. It means the same thing what he's saying Afro, and some of his scholars, even like Dr. Kareem, he's in some of the Kwanzaa book, he's using Afrocentricity. But they come from during the 60s and things when they were using Afro, and I'm saying like, damn, improve the name, make it more relevant to really what it is. They ain't changing the content, because there's no such thing. If you're being progressive, right, instead of moving and critiquing and refining things, you refine the word. There's no such thing. No Afro. There's no Afro people. That's the point. Ain't no Afro. So who are you referring to? But you're referring to the people of African, so-called African descent. Go ahead. You want to say something? You laughing?
No.
Go ahead. We running out of time. We're gonna get ready to shut down. Can't talk forever.
I actually just wanted to maybe state, does it have any less relevance with the name? Because if it's still popular with that name and being purchased, is the message, I mean, is
the contents is great. That's what make it one of the popular books, right? But I'm questioning or highlighting identity. Identity comes before everything else. Identity. Who are we?
Can we realistically change names anytime it no longer fits how we feel? Or
well, author can change the name or title of a book.
Sure.
And we can start calling ourselves by whatever name we choose to collectively, if enough of us agree on. And they're doing it now. Some say we, depending on what camp they're in, we Hebrew Israelite, and they talk about that. We Moors. You hear people, call themselves Moors, because we divided. We don't want to call yet, even just on who our identity is, what our identity is. We know we spiritual being. Okay, we take that, but this a question. What I'm raising, this a question of culture, of history, historical identity. Ain't no such thing as no Afro people. This a question of identity.
Yeah.
Historical identity.
Just a bunch of bad information.
No, well, things were used at a time because there's growth and unfoldment, progression in what we call life and history. Mm-hmm. So as certain progressions take place or happen, then the person who's still living, or just say in terms of a book, you can change your title of your book and explain why.
Right.
But the content's still there. Nothing changed about the content, but the title of the book. That makes sense?
Mm.
So yeah, I mean, I got the book at home, but the contents are great, but the title, that's outmoded, that's obsolete, because there's no such thing as Afro people. And on a final note, I'm thinking about it when I said the word history, and this is a quote from great ancestor Malcolm X, and it's a simple quote. He said, one out of many quotes or statements, history is not hatred. That's it. History, I didn't say history. Mm-hmm. I'm talking about the etymological meaning of the word history, mm-hmm. which means to research and investigate, look back into it, and all that kind of stuff, which I call life study. Mm-hmm. History is not hatred. So we should be inspired, right, to be as informed as we can on our history, our story in this case. Because it's been suppressed, depressed. You understand? The truth. Mm. That's why I use the word accurate, holistic knowledge and truth. Well, holistic, but accurate. That's what we need. And season that with love. Spice and season that with love. But we need to know, because that's part of the name of this show. Right? Not this episode, but a purge, purify, renew our mind. Our minds need purging. Our minds need purifying. Our minds need renewing. And until we break those mental, psychological, spiritual shackles around and in our mind, we will never be a free, proud, and productive people. The last major shackle is the psychological and spiritual. And we haven't made any inroads too much into that. And two of the greatest weapons to maintain that mental, psychological, spiritual shackles is so-called religion and the truth of history. Because the accurate truth and evidence and facts and information that a people get from socially, right, and historically, that's their historical identity. And briefly, our historical identity as a Aboriginal, Alkebulan, African people is that all the evidence, science and stuff says this, and they write about that we the mothers and fathers of humanity, and not only the parent stock of the mothers and fathers of humanity, but of human civilization and culture. That's our identity. That we brought forth mathematics, we brought forth science, we brought forth the rotation of crops and architect and medicine. We were that people. That's our historical identity. And I call it two pillars. Then on the other side is the spiritual. We spiritual beings. People say it all the time. We spiritual beings having a human experience. Because that's our true spiritual identity. That each of us got a spark of the divine within us. This here flesh, this just our body temple. This just the house that you live in, not your address. Mm-hmm. This is your true house. This is where we truly live, in this temple. What do you call it? A mosque, a cathedral, a synagogue, whatever. This our house. That the divine, the spark of the divine dwells within us and is us in your house. You can't dwell in my house and I can't dwell in yours because each one of us got our temple.
Right.
So the historical and the spiritual is the two, I call the two pillars that we rise on. I say the historical knowledge and truth, when understood and lived and practiced, that wakes us up. It breaks the mental shackles. Like Bob Marley say, emancipate the mind, liberate the mind. Marcus Garvey said, liberate the mind. You know, say people who I'm paraphrasing, who lost the knowledge of their history and their past is like a tree without roots. That was Marcus Garvey. That's our historical identity. Then the spiritual. The historical wakes us up. The spiritual raises us up. The spiritual, which is the metaphysical, the esoteric and all that there. Two pillars. We got to have both. And that's balance. You know, some of, like in this day and time, you know, they're so spiritual and we talk about metaphysical thing. That's good. That's a great change and improvement in the age of Aquarius, 2,160 years, right? But we got to find a way of blending the two. Don't forget about the historical, because we're still living in the three dimension. We social beings. So we need both of those pillars in order to raise ourselves up. Like I say, history, historical, wakes us up. The spiritual, metaphysical, esoteric, raises us up. And that's where we at today. Because regardless of how, close on the end point, you're going to have the last say so. Regardless of how spiritual an individual or people become or profess to be, or individual or a group of people, that's good and fine. But I always say, regardless of all that, each of us and all of us, you still urinate. You still defecate. You still eat. That's three dimensions. That's here, right here. You can become supremely spiritual. But if you still in the three-dimensional, right, you still urinate, defecate, and all other things that go along with it. So you still is a part. You ain't transcended yet.
Right.
Out of the three-dimensional. in the body that the spirit dwells in that keeps us here. So you still got to eat. You still got to sleep. Still got to do all the so-called things that we do, regardless of how spiritual you are. So we need both. Final word from you.
All right, final word. I'll end with the quote.
Have it your way, like Burger King.
The eye cannot see what the mind does not know.
Say it again.
The eye cannot see what the mind does not know.
Okay, you want to say a little something on that?
Sure. Let's see.
I know you.
If you can't imagine it, if you can't create it in your mind,
Conceive it,
it works, right?
or have the knowledge of it, conception of it.
Yeah, this works. On
Okay,
this
go ahead.
whole topic. If you don't have the knowledge, you can't conceive it in order to manifest it. What you think?
We can make that
That
work.
work?
Make it work. You got to have the accurate knowledge. So, if you don't possess or have the accurate knowledge of something, and you're trying to achieve something that, first of all, you don't have that accurate knowledge, then you might not get what you intend to get. So, and as you said, what you read, what's the word, conceive or something? No, you said have something. The eye. And when I think about the eye, I think about perception. And that in my mind automatically goes to what's called the third eye, which is the first eye, which is the pineal gland. You know, we see with the two so-called physical eyes, but when I think here the word eye, I think about what's called the first eye, and people say third eye, and that's the pineal gland that's in the center of the brain. And somewhere in the 30-something chapter of the Genesis, where it says something about, you know, after Jacob got through wrestling with the angel or something like that, there became a little mound or hill called Peniel. And Peniel is making reference to the pineal gland right there in the Bible. And then somewhere in Matthew, I think it's the 6th chapter somewhere, it's talking about let thy eye be single. If thy eye be single, then the body will be full of light. That's the pineal gland. That's where the seat of knowledge, higher knowledge and intelligence and consciousness. See, there's a whole nother science to all of that. But yeah, I mean.
So if you can't fathom it in your mind, then you can't create it.
Well, it's going back to that, what I was trying to say or express about conceive, believe, and achieve. Yeah, it's a scientific, spiritual, mathematical impossibility to do that, and that's still in line with the other verse where it's talking about asking you shall receive, because you ask with the conscious mind, and then it say you seek with the so-called subconscious mind. Then the knocking is the work and the effort and the plan that we put into practice. And then with the verse, you got the same, the word spelled vertically that begin in each statement, A-S-K, because it say ask with whatever, seek, and then knock. And then vertically, you got the word ask, A-S-K. It's a formula. It's a spiritual formula for achieving anything. Manifestation. That's what it is. So spellcasting. Yeah. On a positive, a more higher frequency than just going along to get along, and just the routine of every day, how we've been socialized, and if we're gonna rise, a person gonna rise, it has to be a recognition of what has happened to us, to the individual or people or ethnic group regardless of who it is, you got to know and not be in denial to your condition and how it's affecting you, and that someone has ambushed your mentality, right, and put a limitation on what you can do and be about. I mean, really, it's impossible to for one in that condition, mental and otherwise, to be all they can be, as the phrase is said. How can you be? It's impossible. Something has happened. Huh? And I ain't talking about be all you can be for no armed forces or nothing like that. You know, so yeah. But with all that being said, sisters and brothers, ladies and gentlemen, friends and enemies, we thank you once again for taking the red pill of accurate knowledge and truth and in gathering with us on this particular episode of Purge, Purify, and Renew Your Mind. And our topic again was now. Everything that we said and tried to say, whether it's understood or not, the topic was now. And Brother Mike Check, he always told me, tell you to hit the like button and subscribe. You can look at on his intro, say subscribe, and help us to unfold this masterpiece YouTube channel. And each episode is a step along the way of unfolding. I didn't say make, but unfolding this seed-like masterpiece. And so once again, as we said in the beginning, Ma'at Hotep, Namaste, Namaskar, Harambe, Amani, Nawapendo, and don't forget that the seventh principle, Imani, is today. And just a little summary, and check out the vernal equinox that's on March the 21st. That's called research. It's called the spring time, the beginning of spring, and you will see for yourself, if you're not in denial, that that's the so-called yearly birth or New Year's. Peace and love.